and welcome back to Tina Butty Podcast. I'm Erica.
And I'm Dominic.
And today we are going to talk about Scotland.
Scotland, yes.
Yes.
Where are you from in Scotland?
Only really Dominic's going to do most of the talking because I've never been to Scotland.
No, I'm not going to do most of the talking because, the last time I was in Scotland was over 25 years ago.
Well, you're Scottish though, aren't you? So you have
I'm half Scottish, I lived in Scotland. My mother and my paternal grandmother and her family were Scottish.
Yeah.
My mother's family was Scottish. I guess, there's a couple of cousins I've still got on that line. And they came from a small town in the Highlands of Scotland, so they were like deep Scotland, really,
Yeah.
These people that live down south in Scotland, in the southern Scotland, like Glasgow, and even Edinburgh, really, which is the capital.
Yeah.
But I've lived in the Highlands of Scotland. I lived in this little tiny island called the Isle of Arran in Scotland, where which is Scotland in miniature, it's called. Aye.
So let's just go really basic to get started, because, and I'm going to make myself sound like a complete idiot, but we're going back 10, 15 years, right?
Going back 10, 15 years, yeah.
To someone who is not particularly an Anglophile, or wasn't, at least at some point in her life.
You just went through life, didn't you? You just went through life not knowing about these things.
I just thought, I've heard of Great Britain, I've heard of the United Kingdom. I thought they were one and the same, which they sort of are.
Sort of are,
but
yes, but not really. Yeah.
I'd heard of Scotland, obviously. I'm a big I Love Lucy fan. I remember there's an episode.
Is there an episode? What?
Yeah, where they go to Scotland or they're dreaming or something like that. And I remember everybody's in kilts and all of this. So yes. I've known about Scotland since I was little, What's the classic song? You take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll be in Scotland afore ye. Yeah. So I've known about that, but I didn't really know what Scotland was, because I think unless you're like a hardcore Anglophile in America, we don't really understand that Scotland is its own country.
Yeah.
You know, I guess we would probably think like it's a region, or I don't know what we think. I think, actually, if I'm being honest, that we don't think about Scotland. We don't form any sort of opinions about Scotland or Wales.
People don't think, I've encountered people that think Scotland isn't part of the UK. And there's a few hardcore separatists from Scotland who wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
But, I've encountered people who think it's Scotland, some kind of like crazy land away from England.
Right.
Doesn't share a border with England.
Right.
When it does, it shares a land border with England, and it makes up the mainland of Britain,
Yeah.
The British Isles.
I think we have heard of Scotland. We've heard of Ireland. We've heard of Wales. Well, I don't know if we've heard of Wales, but...
No, Wales seems to get even less attention than Scotland.
But we don't really know what Scotland is or where it is, England, Great Britain, the UK, it's all the same thing in our heads,
England,
and Scotland is just somewhere.
The Queen of England.
And Scotland has something to do with it all, but we don't really know what's going on, and we don't really care. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. You don't really care.
So let's explain to those people who may be listening, like I was 15, 20 years ago.
20 years
Notice
ago.
I've gone from 10 to 15 to 15 to 20 years ago.
15 to 20 years ago. What are you talking?
Let's explain what Scotland is, where Scotland is, to get started.
Scotland is a country.
Yes.
And it's at the top of England.
Right.
It shares a land border with England. It's at the very top of if you know what a map of Britain looks like, it's the top half of it, basically.
Right. That bit up at the top.
All that bit up at the top is Scotland.
That's attached.
Yeah, that's attached. Even the Outer Hebrides, I think they're part of Scotland too. And the Orkney Islands too. And yeah, all that bit up there above England is Scotland.
Right. And so Scotland, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, is like the North.
Yeah, the North, yes.
Thrones.
Well, pretty much. I mean, there's the North, you know, you talk to English people and the North is...
Well, okay. Right, so Scotland might actually be like where the White Walkers and
where
all
the White Walkers are, yes. Because there's a wall...
Where the wildlings
Because you see the Hadrian's Wall used to be there between...
Right.
England and Scotland, and that was as far as the Roman expansion went, was to Hadrian's Wall.
And they were all like, what would you call them?
Barbarians,
yeah.
Savages, yeah.
Savages.
So the Romans couldn't conquer them.
Keep them out.
The Romans couldn't conquer them, so they decided to just build a wall and keep them out.
Right.
Which they did, and then, of course, over time, it eventually got knocked down and fell down and whatever. I don't know how high this wall exactly was.
Right.
But yeah, they're still there. You know, it's still remnants of it there.
It wasn't as high as the wall.
No, it wasn't as high as the wall in Game of Thrones. Right. No, which was like several thousand feet tall. Several 100,000 feet tall. I think.
So Scotland's a country, just like England, just like Wales, just like Ireland.
Yeah.
It has a capital. Has
its
own capital.
It has its own capital and its own devolved government, you know, the Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament. And yeah, the capital is Edinburgh. Mm-hmm. And that's got its old town and new town. And
Edinburgh, you guys.
Yes.
If you've never heard of the city of Edinburgh, look it up. Just Google it right now. Just pause this podcast. Or keep listening to this podcast and open up another tab in your browser if you're listening to us on your computer. And look up Edinburgh. It is so gorgeous, and I am absolutely dying to go there. But to get back to what you were saying, it's a country. It has its own capital. It shares a border with England. It does make up part of Great Britain, though.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah.
Right.
A lot of, you know, like the Great British Isles, yeah.
Right. And it's also part of the United Kingdom.
Well, yes.
Because the Queen technically
rules up there. Yeah. I mean, she's got her own Balmoral. She's got her own Scottish palace there, Balmoral Castle, I think it is, and the estate.
Yeah.
Which I'm not exactly sure where in Scotland that is, but I think it's in the Highlands up there. Somewhere.
Yeah. The Highlands now are what?
They're just kind of like moorlands, really, you know, at the very, very top of Scotland.
Right.
And they extend down towards, yeah, I mean, I don't know where exactly they end and where the lowlands begin, you know, as they call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ullapool, Inverness is part of the Highlands. You know, it's very barren up there, you know. Not much going on up there.
There's not a lot of big cities.
No, I think Inverness is the biggest city up there. It's all little towns and villages and crofts, as they call them. And they were all like fishing crofts, usually, because, you know, it's a little island, you know, it's a little peninsula, whatever, you know, you want to call it.
There's a lot of little islands.
Oh, yeah, the Highlands and the Islands is what they like to say.
The Highlands and the Islands.
So you've got, like, the Outer Hebrides and the Inner Hebrides, like Stornoway and all that kind of stuff, you know. The Shetlands are kind of a little bit further off, I think. But, yeah, you've got, like, little islands, like the Isle of Arran. And you've got, like...
Isle of Lewis.
Isle of Lewis, yeah, that's where Stornoway is. But that's Isle of Arran is kind of like...
See, I know now, people.
Yeah,
don't judge me.
Yeah. And you've got, like, the Mull of Kintyre, which was made famous by Paul McCartney and immortalised by Paul in song in 1977.
Yeah.
And it was a massive hit in the UK as well, during the punk time, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was during, like, the height of punk, and he had this massive hit with a Scottish ballad, you know.
Yeah.
Which is right neat, well, it's kind of like nestled in between the mainland and the Mull of Kintyre is Arran. So, yeah, it's like Scotland in miniature, as they like to call it. It's got, you know, you go up there, it's like rolling hills, there's like, there's a bit of mountains.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, there's plains of heather.
So if you go to Britain and you
want to get away from it all, go to the Highlands.
Or if you want to go like at this time of year and see snow, Scotland would be where you would want to go, right? Because it doesn't really snow in the rest of Britain.
Yes, it doesn't really snow that well in the rest of Britain, but if you go up there, your chances of seeing snow are much higher.
Yeah.
Much greater, anyway.
Well, and higher.
Greater and higher. And you are getting higher and closer to the North Pole. Well, the Arctic Circle, anyway.
So Scotland, obviously, they speak English in Scotland.
Yeah, they speak English, and I think maybe up in the Highlands they speak a little bit more of Gaelic.
Oh, yeah.
You'll find some Ballachulish and all that kind of stuff, And,
yes. So, like...
So you'll find some villages where they're, like, extremely speaking, Gaelic, just Gaelic speaking, and, they don't speak
So sort
English.
of like Northern Wales?
Kind of like that, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where all North Wales is what they call Gogland, because Gog, I think, means north in Welsh.
Oh, yeah.
So I have no idea what it means in Scots Gaelic, because there's Irish Gaelic too.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's Scots Gaelic, which is, it's a similar sort of thing, they were once joined and, culture and everything, Celtic.
Yeah.
All that Celtic stuff,
I say they speak English, but you can't really understand. The accent is so different from English.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about the British Isles. It's like there's so many accents and dialects for such a small place. It's kind of weird. Because you'd think, like, down in Texas, this is a big area. There's there's not too much of, like... Variation in, like, accent or dialect, really.
You guys, we did, just as a side note here, we did a podcast months and months ago, probably almost a year ago, actually, about various accents throughout Britain and, and America. So if you would like
to do them too,
if you would like to hear us embarrass ourselves, you might go look for that because it's highly embarrassing.
Well, it's cute. It's cute too. We did cutely.
But yeah, so in Scotland, even in Scotland, the accent varies though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time I went to Britain, I was sitting next to this little old lady who was going to Edinburgh, and I could hardly understand her.
Well, she was talking to you?
Yeah, she didn't... I think I slept most of the plane ride, so...
So that's why you couldn't understand.
But she talked to me at the end. Like, she was asking me, where was I going? Where was I going? And so then, of course, I asked her where was she going, and she said Edinburgh, and her accent was very thick, but... I think you say Glasgow is even thicker than Edinburgh.
Oh, hi, Glasgow. Yeah, it's not Glasgow, you're talking about like, aye. That's kind of like the Glasgow accent.
Isn't Train Spotting or something like that set in Glasgow?
Yeah, I think that's set in Glasgow. Yeah, you watched that, didn't you?
Years and years ago. It was
How could you understand it? Because I think you watched it with your dad, didn't you?
I think I watched it with my aunt and uncle. We probably had subtitles on, maybe. I don't really remember, but...
Yeah, the subtitles. I mean, you've said that about several British films, just to go off a little bit. You've said you've had to put subtitles on because you're just like, oh, I can't understand what they're saying.
Well, particularly before I ever traveled to Britain, yeah. I had the hardest time. I don't know if you guys listening, if you have any... Dominic, I've never had any trouble understanding, like... Even before I was very into British culture or anything like that, like, his accent I just never found particularly thick and difficult to understand.
My accent's very mild and...
But my stepbrothers had a friend... from Britain who used to come visit them. They used to live in Britain as well when they were little. And he would call them sometimes. And oh my God, I think he was from like Bristol, I want to say.
But he didn't have like a Somerset accent. Because I've spoken to him too.
He had quite a posh accent,
yeah, it was kind
actually.
of a posh accent, yeah.
But it was just very...
He's like, hello, yeah.
But it was just very thick, and I think...
He spoke fast.
And he spope fast. That's what it was, yeah. It's the same thing when I'm trying to understand someone speaking Spanish. I can understand the words if they would just slow down.
Because when I used to talk to people who couldn't understand me, you know...
Yeah.
Because I had to kind of modify my way of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I had to slow down and talk slowly. And I guess it just kind of ingrained that into me, you know, from talking to people.
More slowly and more loudly.
More loudly and more slowly. But yeah, I just kind of like slowed it down naturally because, you know, years ago when I was like a kid, you probably wouldn't have been able to understand a word I was saying because I was talking so fast.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe now I won't be able to understand people when I go back to Britain.
I don't know what it was.
Like, what did he say?
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, when you and I are watching shows now, you've exposed me to so many different accents from around Britain. I feel like I'm used. I feel like I'm used to hearing them now. Scottish, no, I still can't get. Yes. I still can't get it if it's a really, really thick accent.
Yeah, you can. You can. You've done it before. So remember, I can't remember what we were watching. Your brother was around, and he was like, "Oh, how can you understand them or something?" And you were just like, "They're speaking English."
But when I was younger, I definitely could not understand what was being said. It's like, I know they're speaking English, but it's really like they're speaking another language. And in Scotland, that's particularly still the case, I think. Yeah, well, you said some family friend of yours, you guys couldn't understand him. Yeah. And you knew it. Like, you heard him all the time.
Our dear departed friend who's no longer with us now. Yeah, me and my dad always used to kind of make fun of him because we couldn't understand a word he was saying. Because he was from Scotland, he was from Blantyre, which was, I think it's sort of kind of like, up in the Highlands and stuff. You know, it's very like, kind of like up there, but his accent was... It was like that. He used to speak so fast. Yeah. And then he had the thick accent on top of it. And he'd been living in England for years. Yeah. He lived in the south of England for years, and that had not made any sort of difference. Right. He was still... And I was just like, what is he saying? You know, because sometimes you just be like, what? And, you know, my sister, you know, who knew him very well, she could understand him like that. It was like, no. And she was like, oh, yeah. I was like... You know, like, how do you know what he's saying? How can you understand him? You know, she was like, it's like, what? What? No, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. It was like, yeah, okay.
He's just constantly nodding.
Constantly nodding, putting your thumbs up, and he's just like, What and is that? My sister would be like, he's asking you a question or something. Oh, you know, because when I was a kid, I was like, what is he saying? You know?
Yeah. No, what is that, asking each other which way to the beach in very loud voices?
That's a Blackadder joke, yeah. Yes. It's like, oh, okay, can you speak English, or are we going to stand here asking each other the way to the beach in very loud and annoying voices?
Yes, that is the way you talk to someone that you can't understand, though. For some reason, you think, yes, let me just...
like their death. You're like, hello, yeah, can you understand me? Yes, this is the way.
But yeah, before we run out of time, I think we should also mention the popular foods that are they're not only found in Scotland, but they're what Scotland is known for. And I think most Americans have heard of haggis.
Haggis and kilts, that's all you know. And bagpipes. That's all Americans know about Scottish culture over here. I mean, pretty Irish culture, they think leprechauns and all that kind of stuff, but it's not. You know, Scottish culture is very... It's a little bit separate from British culture because it's a regional culture. If you've grown up in Scotland, you know what it's all about. Yeah. Really, you know, I know because I've, you know, like I'm watching like 2 Doors Down, which is a British one, and you know it's very kind of Scottish humor.
Show. Yeah.
It's a very Scottish show. So it's like some of the stuff they're saying, it's like, oh yeah, you know, I get it. You know, it's quite funny to me. Yeah. Whereas like an English person would probably just go, I don't find that funny. I don't, you know, who's lived in England all their life and doesn't have any Scottish family members or anything.
It's funny because, particularly from that show, they have, there's a character and he dates these English guys. Right? I think both of the boyfriends we've seen of his on the show have both been English. They've both been English,
yeah. They've both been from the north as well, I think, haven't they?
Well, that's close to Scotland.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they're both from, like, the north, yeah.
But you get the feeling in the show, and I don't know if this is true in Scotland or not, or if it's just true for the characters on the show, but you get the feeling in the show that the English people, and I think one of the boyfriends had, their family came to visit or something.
Yeah, his family came.
And all the English people in the show are quite, like, welcoming of the Scottish people. Like, they're friendly and they like them fine and everything, but the Scottish people don't like the English people.
Oh, fierce rivalry. They're just like, well, we have a listener, or we used to have a listener that said, you know, like, she used to go, oh, I feel like I'm going across the no man's land here into Scotland, going across the border here, you know. It's very, like, you know, there's still that kind of, like, old rivalry. I mean, you know, people who are hardcore into hating the English, then, you know, it's like, yeah, okay, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Get a life.
Get a life. But, you know, it's like a joke. You know, it's like, you know, it's like if you met a Scottish
It's friendly.
Person, it's a friendly banter rivalry now. Yeah, obviously. I mean, we're not fighting wars each other anymore. You know, it's like that's back, what was that, 1601?
Even though a lot of Scottish people do not want to be part of Britain.
Oh, there's a lot of, they don't. They I mean, you know, and they want their Scottish independence.
They're not particularly fond of, like,
Sean Connery, the most famous Scotsman since Alexander Graham Bell, famously wants Scottish independence. I don't think he even lives in Scotland, though. I think he lives in New York now.
You know, I was about to misspeak because it's not true, is it? They don't want to be part of Britain, but they do still want to be part of the kingdom. Like, they like the Queen and they want the Queen.
I don't know about that.
I'm sure that's.
I don't see how that would work, because that the United Kingdom is that. Yeah. I mean, they're always going to be part of Britain because they're on the British Isles.
They're attached.
They're attached. But I mean, what they want to do is they want to separate from the UK and be part of the EU.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. They don't want the Queen then? Because they put their own money in Scotland too,
yeah,
don't they?
There's Scottish pound notes, yeah, but I mean, you know, English.
Is the Queen still on there?
Yeah, she is.
Oh, okay.
But she looks more Scottish. She does.
What does that mean?
They've given her one of those little tartan hats and a little red hair, you know.
Does she honestly have a tartan hat on?
She has a little tartan hat on. She's a little.
Are you lying?
A little tartan hat on with a little red hair and a little kilt.
You guys, we've been married almost 10 years now. I still don't even know when he's joking sometimes. Anyway, haggis. Explain what haggis is very quickly, please. Sheep's
stomach. We've got time. We've got bags of time.
Bags of time.
You just calm yourself down there. We've got it's sheep's stomach lining.
Yeah.
With all the, like, liver and
all the bits.
All the offal. Stuff with offal and oatmeal, I think, is in there.
And that's not AWFUL, offal, by the way.
It's OFFAL. You know, just all the, like, organs of, like, sheep and like, heart and whatever.
It sounds absolutely horrendous.
Sheep's lung, I think, is in there, too. I'm not... Yeah. It's all encased in the thing, and it's boiled. Mm-hmm. And it's traditionally served on Burns Night with neeps and tatties.
And what are neeps and what is Burns Night?
Burns Night is... and
tatties are potatoes, obviously.
Burns Night is the night to celebrate Robert Burns, who's currently tied in first place for most famous Scotsman with Sean Connery. No, I mean, Auld Lang Syne, what you sing at New Year's Eve, he wrote that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, and, you know, it's traditional.
So it's New Year's Eve. Is it Burns Night?
No, that's Hogmanay. They call that Hogmanay. Okay. New Year's Eve. Burns Night, I mean, I'm letting myself down here because I I'm not sure exactly what date it falls on.
Mm-hmm.
But Burns Night is the Burns Night supper, you know.
Yeah. It's somewhere around the holidays, though?
It's somewhere around the holidays, yeah.
Yeah, and so what are neeps?
You know what neeps are?
No, I do not know what neeps
turnips!
Are. Oh, okay.
Yay!
Turnips.
Turnips.
So haggis, Dominic and I were watching an episode of Anthony Bourdain a few years ago, obviously. And
January 25th is the Burns Supper night.
Oh, okay.
So January 25th.
And it's just purely to celebrate the poet?
There's the standard order and the haggis, and then there's the toasts to Rabbi Burns, you know. Okay. And it's a celebration of the life and poetry of Robert Burns.
Okay.
Who died in 1796.
Okay.
And with many Scots poems, and of course Auld Lang Syne is his.
Britain and their ancient traditions.
Aye.
Anyway, Dominic and I were watching Anthony Bourdain one night. And he was in Scotland, and he went to what you would call a greasy spoon, I guess, and ordered haggis. And he was just chowing down on this stuff. And he was like, I don't care what anybody says. Everybody likes to make fun of this. Everybody likes to say that this is disgusting. It's absolutely no different than any like sausage or hot dog weenie anywhere. The ingredients, that is. The ingredients are basically the same thing that you find in hot dogs or sausages or whatever.
It is, yeah.
I mean, have you ever eaten haggis?
I had it as a kid, and I think I had it at a Burns Night thing.
So do you peel off the stomach lining like you don't eat that?
I don't know. I can't remember now. Yeah, I don't think we do.
Because some sausage casing, you peel it off. You don't eat it. It's just to basically hold all the meat together.
It was some sort of Burns Night on the Isle of Arran, Burns Night supper we had on the Isle of Arran when I was a kid, and it was like everyone was in the village was there, because we lived in this little village on the island called Whiting Bay.
Yeah.
And we went to the church hall, and we were all there, and, there was a whole deal for it. And I seem to remember being kind of bored halfway through it, because, it's just like I was a kid. I didn't want to be sitting down all the time. And I had haggis, and I had neeps, and I remember just kind of eating the potatoes.
Oh, I don't like turnips.
And because I didn't know what it was, but I was a picky eater back then anyway. Mm-hmm. So it could have been a plate of mincemeat, and I would have been a bit like, ugh.
Right.
But, I remember having a few forkfuls of it and thinking, it's not bad,
Do they put anything on it, like a sauce, or
no,
you just eat it like that?
Just eat it like that, yeah.
Yeah. I'd be interested in trying it. Like, I'm not closed-minded enough to say, I'm never trying that, I would try it, yeah.
Oh, turnip. It's not turnips, actually. It's swede. I'm just looking this up now, because I'm doing research on the go, everyone. It's swede, which is kind of like rutabaga.
Okay, yeah.
What do you call swede?
Yeah, we've had swede before. I definitely would prefer that over turnips.
Yeah. Mashed turnip and swede, swede. And yeah, as you can see in that photo, it's the inside of the haggis. It's just kind of like
okay,
out.
So they do take the casing off.
They do deskin it, yes.
Yeah. I mean, they do that with sausage too. Like, and so the haggis is served with like in Britain or in England, I guess, they have the full English breakfast. Yeah. And in Scotland, they have a similar thing, right? But haggis is usually with the breakfast, isn't it? No. I'm sure I've read that before.
I mean, it can be, I guess.
Just depends on where you go, I guess.
At the end of the day, it's basically like black pudding. Haggis, but black pudding is more cooked, I guess.
Yeah. They also, another traditional is it Scottish, actually? The Scotch egg? I'm saying it's Scottish because it's Scotch egg.
I think it's Scotch egg. They call it Scots because it's like a deep fried kind of like egg. And, in Scotland, deep fried everything is the norm.
Yeah.
I mean, fish and chips are very popular up there. Deep fried, I mean, for a while the trend was a deep fried, like Mars bar. I don't know if that was a thing over here, like deep fried chocolate bars.
I mean,
in Britain, when I was like a teenager, that was like a big thing in chip shops. They were battering Mars bars and deep frying them. And
I mean, I wouldn't know where to tell you to get anything like that over here.
Then everybody was just like, "Oh, it's very unhealthy for you," and they're going to put regulations on that. And they stamped a load of regulations on it. So, it became kind of like it fell out of favour. But in Scotland, it's still a big thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's also something called pizza crunch.
Yeah.
Which is deep fried pizza.
Oh, God.
With the batter on. Ugh. Yep. Oh, hi, you'll love it.
If it would wash that down with some iron brew, maybe.
Oh, hi, you can't, and that's a good way to end this episode, talking about iron brew. Yes.
Yeah, iron brew is
a soft drink for a hard man. It's made from girders.
I think we mentioned iron brew in our sodas episode, which is available to only Patreons. It's probably
the only soda you need to drink when you're in Britain, really. I'd say if anyone, like Coca-Cola, I guess, would be America's soda. If it was like a World Cup of sodas, right, that would win. Iron brew every bloody time.
I do like iron brew, yeah, and it's got a flavor that you can't really put your finger on. It's Scottish
water.
It's sort of like Big Red in Texas. Like it's just an unidentifiable flavor.
It's an unidentifiable flavor, but Big Red over here, it's not such a. I mean, it's a thing, but it's not such a huge thing as it is in Scotland. You see iron brew everywhere.
I guess not.
They are so proud of iron brew over there. Although there's of course now, the sugar tax and everything, people are throwing a fit because they changed the recipe for it and just put the sugar back.
As I mentioned, if you want to
snowman.
Hear more about iron brew, we did a podcast about sodas that was available to just our patrons on our Patreon page. So if you would like to, you could go check that out.
Yeah.
We need to wrap it up, but very quickly, what do Scottish men wear under their kilts? This is the question that all Americans... This is the age-old question that Americans are dying to know.
Well, and English people, too.
English people are dying to know this?
Yeah,
they don't know?
Nobody knows except Scotland.
They could
Scottish
just travel.
people.
They could just travel up to Scotland and lift one up. Though.
No, they can't.
Let's see.
They've tried that, but it's very hard to get under a Scotsman's kilt, as you'll know. But no, I can't answer that. No comment on that one.
Well, guess it'll have to go unanswered then.
You'll
just have to find a Scots person and find out.
Aye.
Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate your support as always. If you would like to further support us, then the best and easiest and cheapest and most free way to do that is to just share our podcast with all your friends. Share the links. Just tell everybody about us and get them listening. You can You could also give us a review on whichever podcast app you happen to be listening to this on. If this has found its way to YouTube and you happen to be listening to it there, leave us a comment.
Leave us a comment and tell us everything about it.
We love you. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you and bye.
Thank you and good night.
Bye.
Bye.